Hi, it's Cara and today we're filming my May wrap-up. I finally replaced that goddamn light, so hopefully we have no flickering today. This month I read 16 things, 9 of which were from my TBR, which is great. I'm excited about that. I read a couple of audiobooks, I read a couple of anthologies, I read some graphic novels, and all around it was a really good reading month, I thought. I had things on my TBR that I obviously didn't get read because my TBR was ridiculously ambitious, but they will carry on to a later TBR, so it's not too big of a problem. So anyway, let's get started. First off, this month I read Giant Days Volume 4 by John Allison and a number of other people. It changes every volume and I don't have the volume on me, so I can't confirm that for you, sorry. This is the 4th volume in an ongoing slice of life university students in England story, and it's really fun. I wouldn't call it anything deep or serious, but it's just a great time and I really enjoyed it. I also read Volume 5 later in the month. We'll just talk about that now. Again, I can't remember the details of what was in each volume. It was so long ago, it was right at the start of the month, and I've since read at the start of June, Volume 6 and 7. So it's all melding together in my head, but I did really enjoy both of them. They're just fun and lighthearted, so if that's what you're looking for, they're a great option. Between those 2 volumes of the graphic novel, I finished listening to the audiobook of City of Fallen Angels, which is book 4 in the Mortal Instruments. I really enjoyed the audiobook for this. I love, what's her name? The girl that narrates this, what's her name? I'm blanking on her name, but she plays the young girl in Castle, and then Ed Westwick does the Molly C. Quinn. Molly C. Quinn, I love her, and Ed Westwick narrated this, and I thought it worked really well. They paired off the 2 voices really well. Ed did a lot of Simon stuff, and Molly was doing a lot of Clary stuff, and they overlapped on the weird ones, and it was really good. I really enjoyed this. It was great fun. Way better than some of the other audiobooks in this series. I found, or more like, I remember last month I found the first book of the Infernal Devices awful, by the way, spoiler. I'm enjoying Clockwork Prince a lot more for the narration. But yes, this was great narrated, a story I already knew I loved, so great times. The other book I read between the 2 graphic novels was Ace of Shades by Amanda Foody. This is an amazing story. I believe I have a review for it. I'll try and remember to link down below. This is fabulous. It's about our main character N and our other main character Levi. N is from this, is like I was gonna say gentlewoman, no, she's a lady, and going to a finishing school, and her mum suddenly goes missing in this city that is known to be, it's the city of sin. It's really nasty, a lot of gambling and gang action and things, and so she follows off to try and find her mother, who's told her if she can't be found, she's dead, or if she hasn't come back, she's dead. So she's on a mission to find her mum, and Levi is her first lead, and Levi is a gang lord, and it goes from there. This is fantasy, and really good. I believe Levi is black and also bisexual, and there's some other representation here that I can't remember, but this was really good. I loved it. It was great fun. I didn't give it 4 stars because I just wanted something a little bit extra from it, which hopefully will be delivered in book 2, but overall I really enjoyed this. So then next in the month I read A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the novella set between the initial trilogy for A Court of Thorns and Roses before the new trilogy comes out. This just released. It is a weird piece of literature. I'm not sure what to think about it because personally I thought it was really unnecessary. It was just like a fluffy fanfiction kind of thing. But it did kind of leave some hints and teasers for what's going to be happening in the next series. And I guess because Sarah J. Maas is so intent on having like 2 releases every year, it serves as a good like filler for this series, whereas, and like last year we had what is it? The Tower of Dawn for the Throne of Glass series, while the next book in the series was being delayed. This is, I guess, the equivalent of that. So yes, I understand why it existed. I thought it was a bit overpriced for what it was, but I enjoyed it. As always, I find Sarah J. Maas's smut really cringy, but what can you do? I am somewhat invested in all the characters. There are so many problems with this, but they're just also really like hooky. They hook you in, so I probably will keep reading this series, but I also think it's totally unnecessary. Then I read Cast Long Shadows, which was the next installment in the new novella series by Cassandra Clare and others, following Gem. And this one was about, I think this one was about Tessa and Will's son and his kind of like dabblance with fairies. I really enjoyed it. It was really good. Or maybe it was somebody else's. It was somewhere in that era. It was in the Darkest Hours era. I really enjoyed it anyway. I gave it about a 3.5 stars, which is standard for me for like these tiny short novellas. I like them as a big collection. I'm less a fan of each of the individual ones, just I can't give them good ratings. But it was fun and I enjoyed it. Then I listened to the audiobook for Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. This is an amazing science fiction, speculative fiction, space kind of novel. Told in like interview format and case files and things, not as graphically laid out as something like the Illuminae files, but still a similar kind of format, and follows our main character Rose, or Dr. Rose Franklin. She's a doctor, that's a big deal. And when she was a young girl, she fell into this hole in the earth and landed on this giant metal hand, and from there it explodes. We follow her as an adult as she's like researching this, and it's so good. The audiobook especially, it's a full cast narration, everyone raves about it. I'm currently now reading book 2 because it's so good, and I'm gonna have to get an Audible subscription just to be able to buy book 3 because book 3 is not available at the library at the moment. So yes, this was amazing. I'll also probably buy the physical copies of 2 and 3 as well, just because this was so good, so I want it on my shelf. Totally recommend this. If you're into sci-fi in any kind of description, read this. It is so good, but especially the audiobook. Then I read Two Gentlemen of Verona by Shakespeare. It was fine. I don't have much to say about it. I think it actually made me a little bit confused, but Shakespeare can do that to me. It took me a while to understand what was going on, but it was fine. It was Shakespeare. Then I read Fury Born by Claire Legrand. This is another one that I have a review up for, so you can check that out. I'll link it, otherwise it's on my channel. It's there. This is a beast of a fantasy story. It took me a while to get through. Although it's not ridiculously long, it's like 500 pages of decently large font, it just kind of goes a little bit slow, but that's not a bad thing, I don't think, with this story. It's part of a trilogy, and we follow 2 main characters 1,000 years apart as things are happening to them. So it's 2 very distinct plot lines, but you can kind of see where the threads of them are interconnected. So we have Rael, who is kind of like this woman who has these powers she shouldn't have in her time, and so she's prophesized to be the Sun Queen who's going to save everything, and she's falling in love with her best friend the Prince, who she's not meant to marry because she's kind of like a bit taboo. And then 1,000 years later we follow Eliana, who lives in this future world where the magic is totally gone. They're more like a religion than anything else. And she's a bounty hunter and trying to come to grips with that. So this is amazing. I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 stars. I think it was just missing something, which hopefully books 2 and 3 will deliver for me. Just didn't quite have that last little finishing spark, if you get what I mean. But it had no specific faults with it. I thought the women were really powerful and strong and feminist. And this was great. This is definitely though for older teens because there is some sexual content in here. Then I read Queens of Fenburn by Kendare Blake, which is 2 novellas in the Three Dark Crowns series. I really enjoyed this. I thought these were actually really well done for novellas because they're a little bit longer than the average novella. Our first one follows the 3 queens when they're growing up because they spend their like first 10 years of life together before they get separated. And then the second one follows a fabled queen who was an oracle queen and went mad. And these were really, really good, and it gave great insight into the world from like different perspectives, I guess, that you don't see in the main storyline. So I think this was really valuable for the series, which is something I can't often say for novellas. Then I listened to the audiobook and then went on to purchase, because it was that good, the Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. I actually didn't enjoy the audiobook as much as I wanted to. I just found the narration a bit grating. There are a few ways, like the narrator's cadence didn't work very well for me. That may have been because I was playing at 1.5 speed, but I find normal speed just too slow for me. But the actual plot of this was intense and insane, and I loved it. This follows Stevie, who is a true crime aficionado, and she's been promised a place at this fancy academy for geniuses, I guess, who are all looking to pursue their like individual projects rather than a conventional school system. And at this school there was this famous kidnapping and murder, which I believe is loosely based on the Lindbergh kidnapping. And so then she is there to solve this cold case, essentially. And it is great. This story is so good. It is a trilogy, I believe, and I'm dying for book 2, and it won't come out till like early next year, but as soon as it does, I am getting it in my hands. I cannot wait. Then we have Lifelike by Jay Kristoff. This is book 1 in a trilogy as well, and this is his newest series following this post-apocalyptic future world and our main character Eve, who builds and fights these robots. It is so much fun. The plot extends so far beyond that, it's insane. I gave this a 5 stars, but that was primarily for like its last 50 pages. Around halfway it was feeling like a 4 stars, and then the end just like whoop, zoomed it up. It was so good. I'm definitely keen to keep reading this. It's just like this series, it's so good. The next one comes out similar time next year. This was a new release. I think it's just about to come out in the US, but it came out in the middle of May in Australia, and this will be his next solo release, I believe. Dark Dawn, which is the next Nevernight series, the final book in the Nevernight Chronicles, has been pushed back to next year. So this is going to be the next solo work from him, and I'm dying for it. The sequel, I'm just, I'm looking forward to it. Also, our best sidekick is called Lemon Fresh, which is my favorite thing ever. Then we have The Queens of Innis Leah, which is a beast. This is almost 600 pages of teeny tiny font. But I mean, I can't fault it. This book is so good. This is by Tessa Grattan, and it is a King Lear retelling from the point of view of his 3 daughters. And I haven't read King Lear yet to compare it directly, but I believe it's got some things that are pretty close and some things that deviate a bit, and it has a strong magical focus, and it's just, the magic system in this is beautiful. The writing is beautiful, but I will warn, it is a slow, character-driven, dense book. This took me over a week. I just was slow, and I could only read it just took me ages to read, I guess. Like every page just took time, and I loved it, but that did, if I wasn't reading this, I could have read 2 extra books this month. But I enjoyed it so much. It was beautiful. This is also a new release. I totally recommend it if you are happy with those slow meandering reads. It is gorgeous. Definitely an adult fantasy, but beautiful. Then I read Begin and Begin, a Love Oz YA anthology. This is an anthology of Australian short stories, and this was so much fun. Everything was really different and I really enjoyed that. There was a mix of like science fiction, a bit of, was there fantasy? They're mainly contemporary feeling, but some of them have like science fiction themes. I don't think there was any fantasy themes, but I can't really remember. Oh yeah, I guess one of them was a little bit fantastical. Yeah. So this was just super beautiful. I loved this. There obviously were stories I liked more than others, but on average it was pretty damn good. I think Amy Kaufman's was a favourite, but also the second story by Will Kostakis and the one by Melissa Kyle were also favourites. Then I read, I was obviously reading that throughout the month. I kind of like fitted it in around other books, and that was the same with A Tyranny of Petticoats by Jessica Spotswood. And this is another anthology book with 15 stories from a bunch of women following women throughout history, and it is really good. Again, I enjoyed it as a whole. There were some stories that I was a bit meh on and some I really loved, but overall I thought it was kind of great. And ones I really enjoyed were Leslie Walton's story, Marissa Meyer's story was also really good, and I don't know, overall generally this was really good. Both of those I do want to say, I think if I tried to read them all at once, I would have given them a much lower rating. Anthologies work best for me if I read like no more than a story a day. And then finally this month I read I Was Born for This by Alice Oseman. This is Alice Oseman's third novel. This follows our two main characters, Angel and Jimmy, and Angel... Jimmy is the lead singer of this famous boy band akin to One Direction, and Angel is one of their biggest fans, and that's kind of this big thing going on. It's talking a lot about the effect of fame on people, and kind of viewing people as real people rather than your idea of them in your head. And it's just a really complex story, but it's really easy to read. I like slammed this out in 2 days. It was so good. I really enjoyed this. This was totally a 5 stars. So those are all the books I read this month. Comment down below if you've read any of them. I would love to chat with you about them. And otherwise, thank you for watching, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye!